Yes, we are the Pomegranate Grove. We like all things mystical, especially tarot and astrology. I think we're going very tarot today. I am Mandy, also known as Mandy on the Moon. I'm in Cambridge, UK. This is...
Hi, I'm Cassidy. Cassidy the card slinger. I'm over on the west coast of Canada.
Did you know that your video's off, Cassidy?
Yes. Sorry, okay. I'll join in a minute if I can. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Okay, Khalid.
And I'm Khalid, also known as Khalid of Wands, and I'm based in Kuwait.
Marvelous. And we're very happy to have John here, who is one of our Patreon members. So, hi, John. John's in the UK. So, fantastic. So, Cassidy, please do tell about tonight's very interesting topic.
Yeah, so as you probably saw in the title, it's called Cards with Potentially Similar Energies. And I thought this would be a really good topic because there's certain ways that you can, lay cards, and then if you maybe look at a different option, the cards will kind of say the same thing. So without picking cards up and continuing to use a deck that's maybe not full, what ways that we see the cards kind of saying what they already said or saying something again, but with different cards, and just seeing where, because every card brings its own unique, authentic thing. That's why there's 78 of them, but some of them can kind of point to a similar or same message. So yeah, I want to talk about that tonight.
Yeah, I think it's there are many reasons why it's a fascinating topic. But for me, for example, one thing I've encountered often when I do a reading is like I might expect, because say for example, it'll be a reading about a big issue. And so I'll expect a trump to turn up, but instead of that, I'll get a card from among the minors that does have actually a very similar energy to maybe what I was expecting to turn up from among the trump cards, And so that gets me thinking, oh, maybe, why did this, for example, like one pairing I often think of is the Devil and the Eight of Swords, right?
Yes.
And so sometimes like I'll be expecting the Devil to come up and then maybe the Eight of Swords will come up instead. And so I'll start thinking, oh, well, maybe there's a lesson for me there. What if the lesson is maybe the situation isn't as like monstrously huge as you think, for example, or maybe you need to look at it a bit differently, So it's interesting because it gets us also to thinking about like the logic, like the rationale of the design of the tarot, right? So, for example, okay, so why is there so much overlap and resonance between the Lovers and the Two of Cups, for example? And then where do they begin to diverge, and why? Why is the Lovers like the one that's the more archetypal card, and the Two of Cups is supposed to be considered more of a daily situation type of card, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, it gets us to think, try to kind of tease out the philosophy there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like I've just had like different situations where, especially if you're looking at different options someone's about to take, or if we kind of look at a prediction that says, this is going to play out this way, and then we ask the question, is there something we can do differently, or what if I tried this approach? And then you lay cards down and you kind of just want to say like that, this particular thing, it doesn't matter what you do, maybe this guy's never coming back, or maybe, so, and I would say on a more comprehensive level, I would say like combinations of cards kind of give overall energetic signatures that are similar to other combinations of cards, perhaps more so than this card is saying exactly the same thing as this card. So that might be a bit of a limitation of our discussion today, but just to kind of keep it straightforward, you could is so-and-so, or if you ask the question, what is this relationship over, and you say have the Death card, and okay, well maybe it's over, and you say, well, are you sure? And you get the Ten of Swords. It's like, well,
yeah.
That's kind of a very obvious, both of them coming to an end kind of thing, but it's like there's more, I guess, subtle overlaps than, of course, the bigger, like you brought up, Khalid, with the Lovers and the Two of Cups as well. But yeah, it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's interesting. It's like, for example,
it's reassuring, isn't it, when you get two or more cards that have got this sort of thread going through them, it kind of like does make you feel much more kind of confident about your interpretation, I think.
Right. That's interesting. For example, if I'd done the same reading, right, as you did, Cassidy, and I got the death card, I might be inclined to think like, because it's a major card, quote unquote, and it's supposed to be archetypal, I might think that yes, it's over and it probably happened, the relationship came to be to deliver a lesson to the person involved, right? And that lesson was part of the growth, right? And so it had to die, and had to die at this point in time, because that's when the lesson will be learned. But if it was the 10 of Swords that came up as the initial answer, I might be inclined to think of it like differently, that it might have been just like maybe a bad choice, you know, and maybe the lessons learned won't have been, you know, that necessary or that destined, for example, you know. But yeah, it's like, it's interesting.
No, I think that's a really good point, where it's like individually, each of these cards, no matter what their overlaps are, there's something that they bring. They all bring a level of complexity that are, you know, very inherently their own, as opposed to, you know, that we actually see any real duplications, because we don't, right? Like I wouldn't say any card is exactly the same, of course, as any other card. But that example you gave, exactly, I completely agree. It's like if we're looking at these cards more than a simple.
What if you were doing something though that was like a fixed position, you know, so each of the card positions had its own, you know, anchor point and its own little question that was being answered. And let's just say that you had two very similar cards, but in two very different fixed positions. Like, say, for example, you had, you know, what does this person, what should this person avoid? And at the same time, what should this person attract? So they're two very opposite kind of questions being answered, but you had the 10 of Swords and the Death card or whatever in both of those. I mean, how would you kind of approach that?
That's really interesting. I mean, it would be especially, I think it would be especially challenging if you got the 10 of Swords for what you should attract, because it might be good for you to attract a death-like experience, because it might be kind of getting rid of something really outworn in your personality that just needs to go.
Yeah.
But the 10 of Swords is more aligned with like suffering that's often just excessive, perhaps senseless, perhaps the result of a bad choice, you know? I mean, it's hard to answer your question without knowing what the general context is.
Yeah, true. But you know, the answers that we're kind of giving and the interpretations that we're giving are a combination of the question that is being specifically asked, if you like,
right,
and the card that comes up. So
yeah, I think probably I mean, of course it depends on the larger context, but just off the top of my head, if the 10 of Swords came up as an answer to what you should work to attract, probably I would interpret it as you need to kind of work on, let's say, killing off the significance of something you're really attached to, something that's bad for you, but you've put a lot of your identity in this thing. It could be a relationship, it could be like a certain addiction, a certain, I don't know, it could even be a job, part of, you know, a job that you really kind of, it's grown, stuck to you to the point where you can't imagine your life without it, you know?
Yeah.
And so maybe that's like, just like kind of like putting it to the ground, just consigning it to the dustbin, and maybe developing a new type of identity for yourself. I mean, that's one interpretation.
But I often think that a situation can, whatever the situation is, it can have, oh, hi Cassidy, there you are.
Hello.
It can have its two sides of the same coin, if as it were.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And something that could be really lovely at the same time could be really bad for you. Do you know what I'm saying? So when you do get two cards that come up that are similar, it may be kind of like saying you've got to kind of look at this as a positive, you know, there's a positive side to this and a negative side to this, you know, the very thing that you kind of want to sort of attract could be exactly the same thing that you want to limit, you know, and how and avoid. So it's life can be complex.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. I had a couple of examples just laid out in front of me. So one of the cards, okay, so let's just, for example, say you're doing like a one card super quick, you know, quick reading, and someone asks, should they, if the questions say all that's asked is should I move, you know, something to that effect, and say you get something here like the 8 of Cups.
Yes.
So a card like that could largely be, yeah, there, you know, there's you up and moving away, leaving, going somewhere else. And then it's like they would say in this fictional example, they say, are you sure? I don't know if I should move. You lay another card. Now you got this, the 6 of Swords. Also somebody up and leaving, where it's like the first one, it's, I would maybe say, you know, move to the next town. And then you're going to push me again. Now I'm going to say, no, leave, go very far. You know, you need to go across to find a new continent kind of thing. Where it's like, that's kind of, they of course have very different contextual things going on with them, and in I would say a proper reading or a more in-depth consultation where we are really working to grab all that we can out of the cards on our table, yeah, that could perhaps be an even more interesting conversation. But just at a very like high level of overlapping points in cards, there are certain cards that would indicate something like, you know, these 3 cards would potentially say something more to the line of go somewhere else, whereas, you know, maybe we have the Hangman. That's a even if we're just looking at something like movement, right? Like you could say the Hangman is similar to the 2 of Swords, is kind of can be similar to the 3 of Wands in the sense that they're all relatively stagnant energies. They're all a little bit, there's not a ton of movement maybe going on here with the main figures. They are very different cards and speak of very different things. But if the question is of movement and we get something like a stagnant energy versus a moving energy, I just think that's really cool, those little overlapping points in the cards.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And I also think numerology is a big clue, or a big, let's say, context, a big context for understanding resonances between minor cards of the same number, regardless of the suit, right? So if you look at the 4s, there seems to be an established situation, right, for the most part. But with the 5s, you get some kind of disturbance, some kind of disruption that, you know, it just kind of, some energy that disrupts the equilibrium of in the 4, right? So if you look at like the 4 of Swords, there's repose, no, it's kind of similar to the Hangman, like you could say, you know, just the kind of like withdrawing from life, you know, living peacefully in your own cocoon. And then you get to the 5 of Swords, and someone is active in a kind of, in a very dynamic kind of power play situation, right? And go to the, let me say, 4 of Wands also. 4 of Wands, you have an established kind of happy family or marriage-like kind of situation going on. And then you go to the 5 of Wands, and then it's strife. It's all of these young men kind of pitted against each other, you know? So it's interesting. I feel pretty certain I could say that, you know, the people who designed the tarot, at least from the Golden Dawn, like they had numerology in mind. They had a certain kind of numerological philosophy that they brought with them in the design of the cards.
Yeah, I think in a sense what we're talking about here are patterns. You know, it's kind of like once all your cards are down that have answered the initial kind of shuffling, and it's like these are the cards that have been selected for this reading, there's more than just the interpretation of the cards. There are the patterns that are formed, and it could be numerological patterns, you know, like there's a lot of 5s shaking things up, or a lot of 4s showing things that are stable, or it could just be a lot of people with their backs to us, or a lot of people looking up. or a lot of kind of animals showing. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, the patterns could be very in your face and obvious, but equally they could be quite subtle, but they are there, and you do pick up on them the more you know the cards. It could be in the colors and flowers, I don't know, anything. But I do feel that once things start to kind of emerge in 2 or more cards, that's, I don't know, I definitely think that's deliberate.
Yeah, I agree.
Sort of youthfulness or maturity can show, you know, do you know what I'm saying, as a theme.
Yeah, that's very true. Fun little side story, because you just made me think of it with the looking at the themes and stuff in a spread. I remember I had done a reading for someone, and I think like just about all of the cards, there was a major theme that we couldn't see faces, and we had backs turned to us, and like 7 of Cups was there, like couldn't even see the whole figure kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what I said was, you know, have you considered pursuing this line of work with a pseudonym or a fake name, or not revealing your identity?
Wow.
And
yeah.
And she said, yeah, I actually, I don't know if she said, I think she said she had, that was already in the process. And she said, and the name I gave you isn't even my real name.
Oh, really? Oh my God.
I'm like, that's so cool. Just this, you know, faceless.
That's really funny.
But anyways, but yeah, and it's just very interesting too. Like when you look at, you know, here's another little example. So we got like the 4 of Cups, which is quite cute. And then if one were to potentially, you know, zoom in on a portion of this card, we would, you know, perhaps see something like the Ace of Cups. Maybe it's in the wrong direction, but it's like, you know, it's taking that little part of that card and making it like, of course, there's dove, there's water here, and there's not a lot of overlap, I would necessarily say, in these 2 cards. There's a difference, right? There's energetic overlap, there's visual overlap, there's numerological overlap, symbolic overlap, things of that nature. So it's just a very cool thing to, I just find like when you see that kind of thing, it will really reinforce or strengthen what is being said, because it's like, not only is it saying it here, but it's saying it numerologically or astrologically or something else in the card.
Is there any card at all that is literally like an island that has no connection in any way, shape or form with any other card? Is there any? And they've maybe all got something in common. Like, you know, sometimes it's really an easy commonality, and other times it's a bit more of a stretch. But is there literally a card that is on its own?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, if you're going to be like really strict, then probably no. But I mean, maybe in relative terms, and just like on the level of the mythology, or like the textbook meanings, let's say, attributed to the cards, right? Maybe the Fool, because the Fool is often said to contain all potentialities. So it's kind of an identity that is defined as not really having an identity. It's like the potential.
On the textbook, but even the Fool, you might associate it with the 10 of Pentacles because of the dog.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? So
if
you leave the imagery aside and just go with the more traditional meanings, then maybe the one card.
I think if you just did that with your readings, though, you're missing a whole lot of kind of flowy energy possibilities to not, not make any kind of like connections with some of the images.
Right.
And I
when you're doing a reading,
think
the whole point,
the innocence of the innocence of the Fool, you could kind of like connect with the pages,
or the Sun,
or the Sun,
right,
I think walking away, the 8 of Cups, like, you know, there's some, you know, visually for sure, there's a lot of things we can pull. But he is, I guess, the only, like, you know, true 0. So in that sense, he's got that going for him.
I do remember I did a reading for someone, and I got so many naked people I just kind of, it was all of a sudden I was looking and I was just thinking, my God, I'm just looking at a load of naked bodies because they were all coming up in this reading. You know, I'd like the world, the star, the judgment people. Right? I mean, who else is that? The sun is a little naked body. I mean, I can't, the devil. I mean, they were just all there. And I thought there's got to be something in that.
That's funny. Was there? Did you come to any conclusions on that?
I think it was more about kind of like just be yourself, you know, kind of that sort of something like that. But it was I can't remember it exactly now, but it was it was like be with someone who accepts you for who you are. You don't have to kind of hide behind anything, you know.
Yeah. I just love that how, you know, I think the example you mentioned, it just shows you that whatever you're communicating with as you're shuffling, right, if it knows how well you know the tarot or in what way you know the tarot, isn't it, it'll give you those clues that you need to come up with the interpretation, the correct one, the one that's right for the reading, you know. So yeah, there is a genius, I think, inherent in the tarot that can it can introduce the hidden patterns to you even from a first time, you know what I'm saying? So you look at them and like, oh wow, oh, they're naked, but you know, but the reason you managed to pick that up is because your style of reading is to pay attention to the visual details, you know. So yeah, it's just it's just like one of the many reasons I love the tarot, because it's like, it's not, you're not the only one, let's say, or I should say, like, you really feel like there is another force with you in the conversation
that
you're having, you know.
And I don't know about you, you too, but I feel more connected with the reading the more cards that start to get turned over. Like when I turn over that first card, there's always a sort of, I suppose, some degree of anxiety. Do you know what I mean? You just don't know what that first card is going to be. You don't know if it's going to hit you with something that's spot on, or that it's all a bit kind of like vague or a bit generic. You just don't know. But and that's why I'm also of the mind that it's good to do a reading that's at least 2 cards, you know, even if you're doing a party or an event, you know, to pick up on the commonalities. But once you start doing the readings with quite a number of cards and they all start to link up and speak to each other, that's when I think it gets really exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
I just feel myself getting more and more connected to the whole story and the situation with every card that is sort of turned over. Like I'm feeling most vulnerable with the first card. I don't know if everybody else feels like that as a reader.
I would agree, because it's that thing of like, the difference of starting a conversation or
it's
keeping a conversation going and diving in.
It's the ice-breaking card, isn't it? The first card, in a sense. Exactly.
And depending on what we know of as a reader of the situation, if we know, we know enough to get ourselves in trouble, kind of thing, like we've been told some about the situation and what we're looking into is something about it, if it's aligned with it, it's like, okay, this is interesting. But if it's not, this is very interesting, because then it's like, is there something we haven't talked about here? Like, it's just very, I don't know, it's that first card is an experience. I would agree with that.
Because it's got nothing to relate to. And I imagine what it must be like to be like a sort of stand-up comic where I know that they're very well rehearsed and all of that sort of thing, but you know, it must be that first moment with the audience, you know, are they going to get the kind of the warmth of the audience or the approval of the audience or the connection with the audience from the first moment, because they've got no other actors on stage with them. They've not even got music or whatever. I'm just saying, if you've got one of those, just literally the person comes on and stands in front of a microphone and has to start, you know, that must be Very scary, I think.
Yeah.
How would you describe that moment in a card? What card would that be for you?
Stand-up comedy, or just kind of, I don't know. The one that's just popping into my head here is like the Page of Wands, because I'm just thinking he's very kind of inexperienced, right? Do you know what I'm saying? He's a page. He's got something to say, and he's just going to have to kind of come out with it and like say it. It's almost like the Page of Cups has got his little fish in his hand. The Page of Coins has got he's got his coin, and the Page of Swords has got his sword. But I feel like the Page of Wands, it's more like him and his voice somehow with that microphone thing. I think he's stand-up comedy novice somehow.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I like that. Now you're making me think like, who's the funny? Okay, I'll ask you guys, who's the funniest card in the tarot?
I mean, I suppose it should be the Two of Pentacles with his stupid hat would be the funniest card. I don't know. Is it?
Funny. Yeah. I feel like that, well, not that Judgment is funny, but you know, say that angel told a great joke.
Yes.
And there's the one guy who's covering his head in his hands, but maybe that's because he's laughing. So
yeah.
You know, I don't. So maybe one of the funniest cards that I've seen. It's not from the Rider-Waite-Smith design. It's from the Ciro Marchetti. The Gilded Tarot Royale. That's it. Okay. So the Fool.
Okay.
The Fool in that deck is so entertaining. It's just, yeah, it's like he has this funny looking posture where it's like one leg is lifted to the middle and then he's tilting like that, and then he has his both hands like this, and then all the glyphs of the zodiac are set in a rainbow like an arc.
Oh yes, I've seen that one.
He has his head tilted with a jester's cap, and he's kind of smiling. And it's just like, you look at it and it's like, this is kind of like maybe a trickster god who's like maybe making a universe on a whim, like maybe throwing a die to be like, oh, okay, this number tells me I should make this kind of universe, so I'll go there, you know? Yeah, very trickster type of energy.
Yeah, that's very true. And I guess like if you go, you know, looking at the older systems like the Fool or the Magician, we're kind of like the, you know, you're like a fool, right? Like the jester / the entertainer, the magician, the trickster, the person who came to put on a show kind of thing. Right. Kind of funny.
I think there are a few performance cards, because you could equally say the Hanged Man is an acrobat. You could say the Seven of Swords is kind of like doing a dance on tiptoes or something. Yeah, do you know what I mean? The Judgment card I would definitely say is a performance card for me. Maybe the Six of Wands as well, because he's out there on show.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's all the sort of thing that you're talking about, Cassidy, with cards that have kind of got some sort of similar message going on.
And the card of you getting booed off stage, the Seven of Wands.
Funny.
That's
funny.
Funny.
What about a card like the Eight of Wands, where there's just no people there? What other cards might you want to associate with the Eight of Wands?
Well, now that we're talking about like being on show, and you said no people there, like the Eight of Wands to me is perhaps the Page of Wands practicing in front of the mirror, maybe. So now I'm looking at it from that perspective. But certainly with the Eight of Wands, like there's a certain set of order or organization with all of those you know, they're being completely in a row. There's a certain sense of teamwork, and so you can look at cards where they have like people that are getting along. It's quite, you know, there's obviously a lot of movement going on there, so you could almost see like the moment before the Five of Wands happened. Like I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you could see it as the flight thing, I suppose. And if you were looking at it in terms of like flight, like I might associate it with maybe one of the cards that's got something going on in the air, like birds flying, and like the Queen of Swords, or the Page of Swords. Even I might just see the aspect of flight in it. On the other hand, I might see the order thing that you were talking about, Cassidy, and I might associate that with, say, the Nine of Swords, and forget all the anxiety and the depression, but just seeing that as kind of order, like all those bars going across, or the Nine of Wands with all the kind of like the vertical lines going down. I might kind of like see it geometrically, in a sense. I don't know.
It could also be what's in the air.
I might sort of see them as lists.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there are two things that just thinking now, like, come to my mind when I think about the Eight of Wands. One is that this notion of an energy working in an impersonal way, or in the background in a way that's not completely understood, right? But it has a real effect on you. And so that makes me think of the Wheel of Fortune card, because in the same way, there's like, there energy, there's like logic, like a universal kind of system of checks and balances that puts you in a certain situation, right? Without your direct kind of intervention. So there's that, but there's also some kind of fiery potential in the wands that is there with more agency, I feel, in the Ace of Wands, And I feel like the Eight of Wands is a kind of energy which, if you do manage to grow aware of it, perceive it, you could possibly locate it in yourself and draw on it in a more conscious manner, so that you can steer the wands in the direction that's more favorable to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do sometimes see that Eight of Wands as like Tinder.
Swiping.
And I do see it as kind of internet kind of, connections, airwaves, that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? And now, does that, so do I see any other card that kind of has that internet airwaves? I don't know.
It's tricky because isn't it the only card without, let's not, I mean, apart from the aces, isn't it the only card
and the
without
Three of Swords?
And the Three of Swords, right. The aces and the Three of Swords. Then it would be the only card that, not only does it not have other agents, but it's like, it doesn't have any human body parts. Like the aces all have human, like hands, and the Three of Swords has a heart, a human heart. So there's something visual reminding you that there's a human somehow involved. But the Eight of Wands, for me, it's like the alien card, And yeah, I just kind of, if there's one card that might point to, let's say, invisible energies surrounding you, could be guardians, could be something else, I think the Eight of Wands would be my go-to card. Like if it came up for me, in response to a question like that, I'd immediately be like, oh, okay, of course, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Interesting. I know that Cassidy's got to go very soon, so I just want to kind of bring in John.
Right.
So does any of this kind of like resonate with you? Because I know you're fairly new to tarot, but have you ever kind of thought about the connections between one, and maybe not such obvious connections? Had you ever considered that with your cards?
No.
In a word. But can you sort of, listening to the conversation, can you sort of see how that is possible? That there starts to be things that show in more than one card that add to the message.
Oh, yes, it's quite interesting to listening to what how other people are interpreting them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I've got no experience in the matter to give an opinion, really.
Right. I mean, it all does come down to the question that was asked in the first place, you know, because if the question was about, you know, can we have advice on how, you know, so-and-so's business is going to kind of be more successful, if that was the question, so all the answers have to relate to that, it's you might just see different things jumping out of the cards than if the question was about something entirely different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and John actually brings up a good point talking about like personal experience, because that's the other thing, right? Is like even within the three of our discussion here, it's like we all saw very different things and we connected to very different cards, and you know, I might lay a spread and see very different themes and patterns than either of you would, and you guys would see totally different things. So
Yes,
there's also
yeah.
there's the person, there's the question, there's the time, there's the reader, all the magical ingredients of a reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Very
it's
cool.
very, very possible that a person might go to me for a reading, and then they might go to somebody entirely different for a reading. And we might even get very similar cards, but come up with quite different interpretations just because of where our minds go during that reading.
Mhm.
Or totally different cards in the same interpretation.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's very open. So
Big time.
but anyway, we do have to wind it up. It was a very interesting topic, Cassidy, so thank you. Just to kind of like add a few bits before you go. So we do have quite a lot of events going on every single month. We have got a spread of the month once a month. Well, it's bi-month. Is it bi-monthly or every other month?
Every other month, yeah.
So 1 month it will be a spread of the month, and the following month it will be tarot technique. And I can say that I am the next one to do this, and I will be doing, I think it is on the 9th of October, Sunday the 9th of October, and I will be bringing forth tarot technique. So if you'd like to learn something new to try with your tarot, do kind of check it out on our meetup or on our website page. What else do we have to say? Thanks very much to sort of all our Patreons that include, Cassidy, have you got your list there?
I do, yes. Our Patreons including Kevin, Pavlina, Dean, Ia, Joe, Danielle, Maisie, Sharon, Kelly, and John. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Yes. And anything else anyone wants to say before we go?
I hope you enjoyed this podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, subscribe, you know,
Yes,
share the
yeah.
podcast, all that good stuff.
And let us know if you have any good combinations of cards that we just didn't even think of mentioning. So yeah. See you all the next time. Thank you for coming, John. Lovely.
Yeah,
to see
thanks
you,
a lot.
and we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for engaging with us. Please like, subscribe and share. To book a personal, in-depth reading and to learn more about our incredible courses in tarot and astrology, please visit our website www.thepomegranate.grove.com.